just gotta hit one thing here. That way I don't have to.
Uh,
One thing here. Don't worry about it. We're almost there. And there we go. Done. Done. All right. We are officially ready to rock and roll here. You ready?
I guess before we start, what exactly did you want to talk about? I mean,
We can figure it out as we go. Don't worry about
okay,
it. I like if you listen to any of these shows prior to coming on here,
yeah,
there's no set topic. Like we could literally talk about. I've had a conversation where we've had Mike Tyson. Where would you rather get hit by Mike Tyson's punch or a car? I've had like serious conversations. It like honestly, the whole point of this show,
yeah,
the real point of this show is this is something. This is just not just about the it's not just about what we talk. It's more about like you, right? It's as much about you as it is about your art and your product. So, I
okay,
mean, we could talk about, like I said, I don't know. We could talk about the color purple. I don't care, right? And I mean that like not in a terrible way. I mean that more like we'll see where this conversation goes and see what happens. I'm not
okay.
worried about it. So, I mean, I've interviewed a 12-year-old like not too long ago. So I mean, I if I like I'm really there is no fear here. So how you doing today, man?
Great, I'm great. And
Yeah,
it's Jorge,
Josh,
Josh. I'm sorry. Wow,
Jorge. Wow.
sorry. I was talking to someone named Jorge just a few minutes ago before you. So,
Okay.
Josh, got it.
Got it. All right. Well, welcome everybody to this episode of Just Josh, and this is the way we're going to start this show. It looks like there we go. Hit the button the way I wanted to hit the button. That way I can. If there are comments, hold on a second here. Hold on, I didn't write one. Boom. There we go. Now we are fully ready to go. Like I said, Twitch and Zoom don't get along. Like they're like brothers that beat each other up. You know, they really are. So
Right.
that's what they are. So I set up so I can watch comments. The thing about StreamYard versus or Restream or some of these other programs is they do have the benefit. Surely I can actually just watch the comments as they come on there if they do come. Like I said, my show doesn't always have. Oh wow, cool! We got some guests already coming in saying hi. So, um, anyway,
Great.
man, how's the day going, and what are you up to, man? We'll start easy.
It's good. My name is Steve Crompton. I'm very lucky in that I am a full-time uh, artist and designer. I've been working in the gaming and comic fields for like 40 years. So it's a very long time. And
Yeah,
I'm doing great.
I I I don't know, man. I mean, luck. I mean, is a relative word. I think. I mean, right place, right time does play a role in it. But if you're doing something for 40 years, it usually means you're pretty good at it. Like I mean, honestly, I mean, they can like you all they want, but if you're not good, they tell you, right? They might be nice about it, but they tell you. You know what I mean?
Sure. And that happens to everybody. That's happened. There's been times when I worked somewhere and they were like, you're late too many times, or your style just doesn't match what we're doing. And then other places I've worked for people for 25 years and they loved everything I did. So, yeah, I mean, and I think being a successful artist has a lot to do with being, you gotta listen to what the customer wants, and you have to try and always work hard and get it done when they want it, and try to make something that's exciting and fun for the end users.
Yeah, yeah. So what games have you worked on? If you don't mind me asking.
I was the art director for Flying Buffalo for about 20, I get to 25 years. I did a lot of I worked on Tunnels and Trolls, which is the second oldest role-playing game. I'm currently working with Ken San Andre and Monsters. We're doing a lot of new projects with that. I've done stuff for Goodman Games. I've done stuff for Steve Jackson Games.
Okay.
I've done a couple of little things for Judges Guild back in the day. I've done Mega Traveler stuff for Mike Miller. So I've
Okay.
worked on a lot of games over the years.
Yeah, there's something about you that screams gamer. Like Steve Jackson games, I'm well aware of, like Munchkin or like something or other stuff.
I did a bunch of stuff for their magazine, their Space Gamer magazine, and then
Okay.
also in some of their GURPS supplements back in probably the mid 1980s. probably the last time
It's
they probably reprinted some of that art over the years, but that was probably the last time I did stuff for them on a regular basis.
wow. So you've
Um,
been doing this, like I said, like when he's 1980s. That's like wow. I was a kid like that. So you've been a big part of this culture for a very long time.
yeah, I did
Yeah.
my very first real published work was I worked on the Gribtooth Traps books for Flying Buffalo. We ended up doing 7 of those. There each book had 101 traps for any role playing system,
Yes.
and they were really successful. And I was still in high school when I started working on the first traps book, and that was the summer. I think it was the fall of 1980. That was
Okay.
that was when I first started. And that book was published in the spring of 1981. So
You kind of fell into this now, like in some ways.
yeah, so I go way, I'm not first generation RPG industry, but I'm pretty close.
Yeah,
So
you're if you're not one, you're 1A. Like
there
that's
you go.
for sure.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah. You're not one, you're 1A. Like that's how long. Like yeah. No, I mean, so you've been a big quiet development for some of the communities that are out there for some of these games, right? So, um, it's funny because I just helped somebody on a Kickstarter that's doing role playing stuff, like designing his own role playing stuff. So it's amazing how much that industry has evolved, and how much it's stayed the same too. Like it's actually
yes,
of all the communities, the tabletop board game community is probably it's both the most static, but also probably the one that's most. It's a weird balance of we like this particular kind of way of doing things, but we'll try all these new different systems out throughout. So it's a fascinating part of the entertainment industry.
yeah, absolutely. When I first started working at Flying Buffalo as a store clerk, they hired me. I was very polite. I was good with, kind of courtesy, customer service stuff. So they had me in the store. They also hired me because I was a drafter. But, we were selling a lot of our products we were selling were those old hex board games, right? Back
Okay.
in 1980. SPI was still publishing all sorts of that kind of stuff. And that was the second part of the gaming industry at the time. Now that's almost vanished. I mean, there are still people doing those kinds of games, but they're very few and far between, and they're not a major component anymore. It's all role playing, card games, and board games.
Yeah.
Sort of much more open to a larger market. Um,
Hmm.
when I was a lot of things that people, like collectible card games, things like that didn't exist. There was no
No,
such
that
thing.
that came in the '90s with
Yeah.
Magic, and I'm a big collectible card game guy. Like I still play Commander. I don't actually play much more competitive Magic anymore, but
Oh yeah.
once upon a time that was my area. But I mean, like games are a big like games have like board games. I think have had the biggest resurgence of the last like 10 years. I mean, they're so complex now compared to like what I remember when I was a kid and started. Now it's just like you look at something like Arkham Horror and you're like, whoa, like even the setting up takes work now. It's like, but it's we have become very elaborate in our gaming systems, whether it's board games, card games, or even role playing games. Right?
Oh yeah.
There it has become. Each of them has its own like world building and storytelling that has very become much more evolved as it has grown.
Yeah, it's the whole world building aspect is huge compared to what it used to be. I remember playing games like Sorcerer's Cave or Dungeon or Hunt the Snitch. And those games, the world was irrelevant. You were in a dungeon and you had to kill monsters and get treasure, or you were trying to hunt this goofy creature inside a limited area. There was no world building to it. It was just an abstract game that you played in this setup. And I think partly that's been an effect, I suspect, of world building in general. You look at superhero movies, and they used to be, it used to be, here's a movie about Superman. There's Superman, there's Lois Lane, there's Jimmy Olsen, and there's the rest of all the rest of the DC universe doesn't exist. It's not even mentioned. There's no bigger world with all that stuff. And now that's all this big shared universe where it's all oh yeah, well, over here there's, Batman in this city, and there's Green Arrow over here, and there's, and Marvel has built this vast universe. And I think that's spread out to all aspects of genre fiction, whether it's novels or games or computer games, where everybody says, well, we got to build a whole universe.
Well, I think fantasy in particular, I think definitely fits that because fantasy requires, I think, since Tolkien, right? Which it was since
Yeah.
Tolkien, there has been a bigger emphasis on world building. I've always been more of a Narnia guy than Lord of the Rings, but again, giving credit where credit is due, Lord of the Rings has definitely changed the game forever. And I think everybody's been kind of copying that. Okay,
Yeah.
right, there's a bigger story going on, and we're telling one part of a much larger story. And sometimes I think what's happened in the case of comics, I think I think in some ways, especially you look at the movies, I think they're trying to go back to something simpler a little bit because it's asking a lot to I've had this conversation on the show before. I've been like, I think superhero movies have kind of been, there's kind of a fatigue, I think, right now. I think that's some of what's going on. But I think part of it's too is I remember getting to Avengers Endgame, and while I enjoyed that journey, that was like 20 movies,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know if if an audience wants to do another 20, right? They might want to do just a really good one, right? And that's it's almost like, I think comics are in kind of a similar boat. Like, because of the way things are, I don't want a complex mega event happening over the next 2 years. Give me a good character in a cool world telling a neat story. I don't need much more than that. And maybe again, this is just me showing my age and just wanting something a little simpler. But I think there is a fine line between, I think there's good work. I think every good product, like whether it's a game, a book, a movie, even music, you name it, has world building aspects in it. But
Yeah.
I think the fine line is, okay, how much is too much, right? How much is okay? I remember going to San Diego Comic Con this year. I went to the young adult conference. I think the one thing that stood out from that, besides a few revelations about where I think the industry is going, um Victoria Aveyard has said something really good. It's like, does the audience really need, I know in my world how the rice trade works in my universe.
Oh yeah.
Right. Dude, does the audience really need to know that? It's really good,
Yeah.
right? Like there's a point, right? And that's the thing. Like, it's really easy. I think world building can be a super fun. I think it's a cool part of any good story is you have to have an idea of how your world works. But I also think there's also points like, you know what? Um, I like the fact that they're like, Brandon Sanderson has his Cosmere, and every world has its own rules. But what he's able to do very well is each universe has its own story, and it doesn't try to grab things from here, there, and everywhere. I think comics are moving. I think mainstream comics are moving slightly away from that event. I think it's partly the economy, but it's also, I just think there's a point. It's like, okay, it's really cool when we get them all together, but it's also cool sometimes to have something a little simpler for people to grab to. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
I think, well, if you look at the old comics that when Stan Lee was in charge of Marvel, they had long connected storylines and characters and situations, but they always would, when you're reading one of the comics, if they had something that connected to that, they would have a caption that would say, hey, this is, they'd explain who this character was and what they're, why they were attacking or who they were, and some of the newer comics, you can buy an X-Men comic and read it and not even see the names of the characters that are talking. They just are standing around on an island talking to each other, and you don't actually even know who they are if you hadn't picked up the other 20 previous issues. I think that's what Marvel's suffered. The last movie that just came out, one of the things I think that the Marvel's movie suffered for was a similar sort of thing, was accessibility. If you really wanted to get the characters, in the old Marvel movies, you were at least all movies.
Hmm.
But with the Marvels, you had to sign up. You had to have a Disney account plus account. Then you had to make sure you watched all the episodes of the Ms. Marvel series. You had to make sure you had watched almost all the episodes of WandaVision. And then, of course, you had to make sure you had seen Captain Marvel, and probably you should have seen some of the other movies that she showed up in here and there as well. So if you weren't signed up to Disney Plus and you hadn't watched the other two series, you had no idea who Monica Rambeau was, and you had no idea who Ms. Marvel was, really, you know? So I think a lot of people didn't go to the movie because they didn't know who those characters were, you know?
That's part, maybe part of it. To me, I think Marvel has lost its like must see moment. My theory about that is twofold. One is I don't feel there's a lot of tension in a lot of Marvel movies right now. Like I don't like I right, with a few exceptions, there I'd never have felt like there was a risk to the hero involved. One of my favorite examples of that is Thor: Love and Thunder. I think it's a fun movie, but I never once thought Thor was in danger.
No,
Ever.
that's totally true. Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. It was just a lark. It was just like two people
On
going out on a picnic or something. You know,
Yeah,
there was no real stakes.
yeah, and don't get me wrong, you can have fun with that to some degree, but if you're asking someone to commit to, if you're asking someone to commit to something, there's like, what's the payoff for me? Like,
Yeah,
what's the payoff? And I don't think like and again, I don't think Thor is necessarily a bad movie. I don't think it's a great movie though either. It's somewhere where it's good, but I'm not gonna lose sleep if I miss it.
yeah,
Right? And I think since Avengers Endgame, I don't know if Marvel has had a can't miss movie. Right? I don't know. Right? I haven't felt it. The only one I kind of feel that I've missed because I haven't watched it because I have become deliberately uncool it is the Spider-Man movies because everybody has told me that
that was
that's
really good.
yeah, everyone has said the exact same thing. I've seen so many Spider movies in the last 20 years. It's like I'm not in a rush, but I can acknowledge that I might be missing something there, and that's fine.
Yeah,
I will go and check them out. I saw the last Guardians movie. I thought that was fine. That was a
yeah, I enjoyed
good
that. That was really good
that
too.
yeah, that's a good send off to that particular franchise, and that's great. I enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah,
Right, that was good, but I would be hard pressed to think of anything else in the last since that. Okay, Spider Man, sure. Doctor Strange, maybe. I wasn't really crazy about, and this is weird. I like Doctor Strange as a character. I have not been crazy about seeing any of the movies. Just my own, and
yeah,
that's personal taste. That might be just personal
yeah.
taste,
I
right?
enjoyed the last Doctor Strange movie. I thought that was really good. I was totally bored with the Eternals.
Hmm.
Um, Quantumania, I liked parts of it. There were parts of it I thought were just silly, like Modoc. They ruined that character. I thought it was silly to be in the microverse and there's like a bar where people are hanging out drinking. I was just like, really, is that what a quantum level universe is going to be like, just like here, except it's a bar in space. Things like that really annoyed me. But Shang-Chi was pretty good.
Yeah,
It didn't really connect to anything, but it was good.
and maybe that's why Shang-Chi was made because it didn't connect to anything. But what I'm getting at is I don't like based on everything you've just told me, I haven't
Yeah.
missed much. And that's just where Marvel is right now. I haven't missed much. So
Yeah, there's nothing worth shattering in that regard. Yeah.
yeah, and that's it. Like they hit a point where they've established themselves as a property, and again from a business and I kind of get it. You're saying about kind of a quote unquote new status quo now that like the first generation is practically all gone but Thor. But at the same time, there's no tension, there's no risk, there's no need to go into a story, right? And that's kind of what I feel like with them. Now maybe when they finally do another Avengers movie, but that might change. They might need to do that. But until then, I haven't seen a Marvel I haven't felt like I've needed to see a Marvel movie in a very long time. And that is, I think, that is a little bit of an indictment on the studio right now. That's a little bit of an indictment. Like, you don't have the same level of I'm excited to go see the movie, and I'm not entirely sure why. I'm not saying the movies are bad. Like, that's
Yeah,
not what I'm saying. But I don't feel like I need to go see them. And that when I've hit that particular point, right? I think it's time to go back to the drawing board a little bit. It's like, okay, why aren't people clicking on
right.
this,
And I think that's
right?
happened to a lot of people. You're not the only one that feels that way, I suspect. So
Yeah,
I
no,
go to the movies. I've been a comic fan my whole life. I do comic books.
yeah,
Uh,
no,
I've done about 40 comic books, in my career. And so I'm always interested in that. And I have
sure.
a professional curiosity about where, what the latest is and where it's going. And I like to, so I can, hold discussions with people like you about, hey, what did you think of this? And, hey, where's this going? And all that kind of stuff. So I watch them for no other reason than that. But I enjoy them for the most part.
Oh,
Definitely.
and by the way, I want to say this. Like, I don't think it's a crime to enjoy what's there. I don't think they're bad. I just don't, right? I just don't at this moment go, I need to see this. And that might change. Like, something might come up that might blow my mind away completely. It's possible. Um, I mean, I might, out of curiosity, check out the Blue Beetle. Maybe I've heard a lot of good and a lot of not so good about it, but I also think I think it's interesting. Like, DC animated, people love DC's animated stuff,
Yeah,
but they're like,
those are really good. They're consistently good.
yeah, no,
Sometimes
they're
they have better character development and more drama than the movies do. It's weird. I mean, they do things with relationships they don't and interpersonal or actions that you don't see in the movies, and it surprises me sometimes.
yeah, my favorite, one of the few things I still actually watch that's current. Like, okay, I watched three superhero things that are kind of current. The Boys, which isn't, I mean, it's a superhero, but it's not really kind of, but
Right.
it's based on a comic. Invincible, I think Invincible's fantastic. I really enjoyed that cartoon. And Harley Quinn, I never thought I'd enjoy all that world building that's done in there the way it's done. It's a little tongue in cheek, but it's also got some serious gravity in some spots too. It's like, this is very well done. I never thought I'd like Kite Man so much in my life.
I've seen a couple of episodes of uh, Invincibles and Harlequin. I don't have HBO Max, so I only get to see him occasionally. But I've seen all the boys, and I'm watching Gen V right now, so
Yeah.
definitely enjoy those. Those are amazing. They're so over the top. It's just like
Well,
wow.
yeah, but that's part of the caveat of the boys, right? If you read the original comic, the show's better than the comic. I'm just being very, very, very blunt. The show is dated. No, not show's dated. The
Which
comic's
one is
dated.
dated?
The comic, the comic's very
Oh, okay.
dated for its
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
A lot of the concepts for the show are there, but the show made them by and large better. Like, a little bit more of a modern take of it, but also it's just smart. Like, even though it's over the top and batshit crazy, right? And right, it's like, I can see that it fits this world. It's a very, I think, I look at like a character like the Deep, and I'm like, that both the actor and the writers had a shit ton of fun with this character, like a shit ton of fun with him, and you could just see both his growth and oddly his lack of growth at the same time, and you're like, this is terrifying, but I can yet also see it, right? I can see it completely, and that's something that I think, a good, again, it doesn't have to be a superhero show. What any good piece of fiction does is you're going on with the ride with the character, and when you realize that, like, the creative team is doing this on purpose,
Yeah.
right? It's a great ride. It's an absolute, like, fun ride. It's when the dots don't connect, like, fully and completely. That's when things can go completely out of hand. I think, I like when I look at, like, say, a DC movie, for example. I think they try too hard. That I actually think that's what it really comes down to. They have this idea of what they're trying to do, and it's just like, this isn't clicking with us. So why, right? I look at, whereas I think this is where Marvel I think is better, is they do grasp the human characteristics of all their characters. Like they do a really good job of that. Um, so it's natural. You're rooting for the people you're supposed to root for,
Yeah.
and that right, and that's to Marvel's credit. I think I again, not to beat the dead horse. I just think right now Marvel does is missing tension, and I'm not sure what the fix for that is short term. But that's what I think. That's what I think it is. If they fix the tension issue a little bit, it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think they're a little bit stuck in a path at the moment. I'm not sure how they've already got these things that they're heading towards, and they have to they're not in a position to just kind of say, well, we're going to throw this little wing over here. They've got to try and
Yeah.
finish these. I think what they're going to try and do is try and move them in a direction I think is going to be more successful or popular, I would guess. I'll tell you what I saw. You were talking about other series, not comics. My wife and I just finished, was really good. Is, if you haven't seen it, is Blue Eye Samurai. Uh,
Okay.
that is animated. I think it's on Netflix, and it is phenomenal. It's kind of like The Boys, and it's way bloody over the top, but it's really, the character development in it is phenomenal. It's just phenomenal how they write. Again, it's another example of an animated show that has deeper character development than almost any movie I've seen. It's just phenomenal. If you haven't seen that, look it up.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up. I'm my current anime picks right now are Spy X Family. I thoroughly enjoy that.
Oh,
That
yeah.
one's okay, but that one again. There's something about like a tone once set is it will encourage people to go on the ride. I enjoy the character development of all the characters, but they're so silly and it's on purpose, and that's why it's so much fun for me to watch that one. Probably the most character development anime I've ever seen. This dates me a little bit. Is the Full Metal Alchemist series?
Oh, yeah.
Is I don't know if you've ever seen that or not.
I think I've seen scattered episode here or there. I haven't really committed to it. I don't think, other than seeing, like I say, a scattered episode. Did you watch One Piece, the live action One Piece?
I haven't seen it. I've One Piece by the time I got into it had this like giant library. Like I'm a reader first, then I watch TV.
Oh, yeah.
That's just how what I am. So I usually I'll find a manga like I like, and if they have a show, I'll watch the show and just kind of see what it is and how faithful, and yet also sometimes how different it can be too. Right, television's a different medium, and I like it when they play into what the world could be. Um, in term One Piece, I've heard good things about. For anime, my favorite stuff is Fullmetal Alchemist. I love a series called Code Geass. That was really smart. Um, I liked what the heck is it? It's blanking me. Fairy Tale is another one. Oh, that one's one of those long ones. Like
Oh,
anime
yeah.
has like, but in terms of character development, it's probably some of the best I've seen. Uh, Blue Eye Samurai probably sounds in the vein of Death Note or Code Geass. It's what it sounds like based on what you're telling me.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, but I
I'm not
mean,
familiar with those, so I don't know that. I don't
no,
know.
it's fair. It's fair. No, like all these different hobbies have these really cool worlds in them, right? And
Yeah.
and I'm not cool enough to know them all. I think no one is, but we like what we like, right?
I
So I'll check out.
didn't I didn't know anything about One Piece, the anime, at all. I'd heard. I think I've seen some art from it, when the black and white
It's
art many
cool.
years ago.
It's
But
cool.
we watched the series. Like, well, this looks interesting, and we watched the live action series, and we're blown away. Again, just, it's really goofy. The special effects are wild. The set design, the world building is phenomenal. And again, what really comes back to what you said earlier, they have stakes, and the characters are, you just fall in love with the characters. They develop them so well, and you care so much about them. It's just really, the characters are like onions, and each episode they reveal more and more about the characters as you go, and it just, you really get involved with them and feel for them. And it's, again, another great series. I can't wait to see the next one of that, or the next
Yeah.
season of that.
No, it sounds cool. I'll check out Blue Eyed Samurai. Like I said, there's some good ones out there. Like one I hope
There is.
I don't know if they developed it, but the one I'm just getting into now is called Vinland Saga.
Oh yeah.
It's a Viking anime. It's very very but it's historical. It's actually really really well done. Like incredibly well done. It's I would that one would be an amazing series. I'm hoping, crossing fingers, but on that one, see that someday because it's so good. It's historical. The characters are very believable, right? There's a little bit of the tongue in cheek, manga feel to it, but it's just like wow, like that stuff's really cool. But like I said, good stories. Doesn't matter what genre you're in. There's a sense of stakes and that get the audience involved in, with maybe the exception in terms of story. Though it's still done there, is games. It's games ultimately because games stakes are ultimately playing the game, right? So
Right. Yeah.
it doesn't matter what the whether it's a video game or a board game or a card game or any of these things. The stakes for the player often involve playing the game.
Yeah. I mean, and it's got to be enjoyable. You know, you can play games that drag on too long or don't feel like they're going anywhere. So I have the fun. It's a mix between having it be challenging and having it be fun and having it feel like it's moving forward. Settlers of Catan is a great example of that, or
Yeah.
Ticket to Ride, or games that are easy to play but very fun, and you always feel like stuff's happening. You're moving, you're building.
Oh yeah.
Those kind of things make it a much more enjoyable, and I think that's why those are so successful. For example.
Well, that and they're not intimidating, right? There's something that anyone can get into, right? There's a
Yeah.
good sense of community in Ticket to Ride or games like that, right? You don't need necessarily a complex game. You just need something that kind of feels fun to play with everybody around you. And like you said, that's why those Settlers of Catan. Although I have seen that one depends on how competitive the table is. If
Well, yeah,
there,
that's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
that one's all about how competitive the table is because if the table's relatively casual, you can enjoy that. But I have seen like talk about games that can get really competitive really fast, right? It's
Right.
almost
Depends who you're
got
playing with.
yeah, it's got the monopoly syndrome, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like if you're looking at Monopoly, it's like if you can have fun, it's a good game. It's an okay game. But if there's a bit of a competitive bone in you, like it can be nasty, right? So, but again, being a card game guy, like my favorite kind of board games are Seven Wonders. Suro's fun, right? I love Suro. Like those are cool games, board game wise. Are you a video gamer at all?
No, I often tell people I'm much like Dr. Frankenstein, not Frankenstein the monster, but Dr. Frankenstein. I am cloistered away in my tower, working night and day, writing novels, putting together comics, working on role-playing materials, making maps. You can see a couple of maps up behind me over there. There's a world map we just finished, and then another one for a dungeon adventure that we did.
Nice.
Um, so I am those are my video games. When I want to do the equivalent of video game, I'm sitting down and building a map, creating a world. That's where that's how I get as much stuff as I've done over the years. So I'm definitely creating those things as opposed to playing them. I only have so many hours in my day, and that's where
Yeah.
I focus my existence. And then, when I take a break is when I go out and I'll maybe watch a movie or TV with friends and family when I'm taking a break. And then every so often we'll play a board game. It gives me a chance to socialize with actual human beings in a room, instead
No,
of just sitting in
I
my
get that.
office working away.
I see it's weird. See, I have a hard time watching television anymore. I just feel like my mind's always active, right? I've been trying
Yeah.
to turn my creativity into a living, and I'm almost there. It's if I keep going the way I'm going, I'll hit. I can almost hit it this year. I will hit it next year, where it's a living wage, and that's cool. But in the process of doing all that stuff, I find that my mind is always active. So if I have to choose between a video game or a television show, I always choose the video game. I feel like
Right.
it satisfies because when I'm watching television, it's like I'm pausing, and every once in a while that's okay, but I can't do it for a long period of time anymore. I
I
just
often eat we often eat dinner while I'm watching TV. So I'm trying to combine my things. Like, well, I have to eat, so I might as well watch TV at the same time, and I can get two things done at once. And I'm
Yeah,
good for, I'm usually good for like hour and a half, and then I'm kind of like, okay, I've had enough time. I got to go back and get to work, or I've got a phone call I got to make, or whatever it is I got to do.
yeah, yeah. No, like that's where I've become like television's the one that suffers. Like like I said, I'm deliberately uncool. I've seen two Marvel movies since Endgame. Let's see, have I seen anything else? Minus, oh, I saw the Dungeons and Dragons movie. I saw that.
That was
I
good.
saw
We saw that. We enjoyed that. I thought it
no,
was good.
for what it was fun.
Yeah.
It felt a little bit. I think to the movie's credit, it felt like a campaign a little bit, which is what I think it needed to feel like a little on some levels.
Yeah.
So, and the story wasn't bad.
No.
The story was fun. From what I was told, it was built based on a real campaign.
Oh yeah,
The
that's great.
right, it was based on a real campaign. So some of the more imperfect parts of the movie were a result of some really terrible roles, right? I think that's fun. That's very fun. It adds to the what happens, right? Especially when something doesn't go to plan. Like I've been a DM, all right, where it's like, well, they screwed this up completely. How the hell do I advance the story right here? And there's a couple of those spots in the movie,
Yeah.
but to the credit, I mean, to the credit of everybody involved, they took it as seriously. I think they had the right amount of taking the lore seriously, but also just I kept a very simple story that anybody who even just came in to just watch a movie would enjoy it.
Yeah, I love the world building in it, and they used the things. It would very much felt not just like a generic fantasy. There were very specific things from D&D, so it really had a nice feel in that regard. I thought I really and if you weren't a D&D fan, it didn't matter. It was just a weird monster. Oh wow, it's a that gelatinous thing that they jump into. I forget what they call it, but the gelatinous cube monster, and or some of the dragon specific types of dragons. I thought that was it made it. It didn't just make it generic. It was great that way. I thought.
Oh
So,
yeah, there's lots of cool little Easter eggs in that movie, but it's also just a fun story. I
yeah.
don't think it again. They didn't try to be Shakespeare. It's like we're gonna have some
No.
fun, put an adventure. There's also a feeling of stakes though, like something I said earlier. Like all the characters were fighting for something,
Yeah.
and that was what made it. That was what made it work. Also, man, I forget who the villain was. I forget who he was as an actor, but he was fantastic. Hugh Grant.
Yeah. They
He
did a
was
really good job with both the villains. The female mage and the other one. I thought they were both well done and well realized.
no, they both were both characters were really well put together. I could tell Hugh Grant had a lot of fun. Like I like looking at it, like looking at
Yeah.
that, he was having a lot of fun because he had a bit of a roguish charm to him. But that's what kind of made him a little terrifying too, right?
He
And
was
that
like a
was
rogue who had done really well, and he'd gotten done really well by cheating and so he was just doing it on a huge scale,
yeah.
effectively.
Oh no, he made a deal with the devil, and everybody knew it.
Yeah.
Like not even the other bad guy who was a little bit more like the wizard was a little more generic. She didn't like him, and I'm like, I can understand. He's a very specific kind of snake.
Yeah.
There was an honesty with what she wanted. Like again, it was utterly terrifying, but you're like, at least you're honest about it. You're not trying to be like something you're not. Whereas him, you're like, you're just a scumbag, complete and utter. But it was but yeah, fun movie. So
I think that's where Marvel and DC are missing. I think of late, the last since Endgame, I'm not sure they've really had a good villains in their films. They've been just kind of generic. Hi, I'm a bad guy, or I'm out for vengeance. It's like everybody's out for vengeance all the time, and it's just been a you know
well, well, again, okay. So I don't spoil Spider-Man because I haven't seen any of those. I don't know who the final villain is in the last one. I know Mysterio is the villain in the second one. I saw the first one, so Mysterio is the villain in the second one. I know that. I don't know who the final one is, but what I do again, I'm not cool, folks. It's okay. But the thing is, right? They have. I've seen advertisements with Kang. Kang could be a really cool villain for them. A really, really, really cool one. But what does he want? Right? What is he? I saw the High Evolutionary in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I thought that was okay. That
Yeah, he
was
was good. I liked him as a villain. That was
yeah.
good.
He wasn't a revenge villain. He was a
No,
monster. He was a literal monster, and that was well done. I think what they're missing, and this is gonna sound really funny thinking about it, they're missing they're missing a Kang maybe is that boss guy. I don't know. I haven't watched enough. But they're also missing they're missing a Loki. And what I mean by that is Loki had a redemption arc. They had like a character trying to redeem themselves. They had characters trying to find their place in life, right? I think the problem with when you look at Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, like those more established characters, we're comfortable with them, but at the same time, you know, what are they going for now? Like Thor, they keep taking shit away from him because that's what they know what to do with him. So it's the only way he
yeah, he
can
keeps
grow.
looking for himself. He keeps trying to find himself.
Yeah,
How many times can you keep doing that and then find yourself, and then the next movie you need to do it again? You know,
yeah. It's just like but so I mean, I think you can still do I think some fun stuff with Thor, but I also think like give him a fun status quo for a while and let him just stay in there for a bit would be good for him. But for everybody else, it's like okay, what are you looking for? Ant-Man has his family. I mean, Black Panther, I think, was the one they were hoping for, but obviously with the way things worked out there, I mean that's unfortunate on some levels, but it's also, I mean, that's the hand they're dealt with, right? And you got to kind of play that out, and that's fair. But I mean, if you're looking at the whole thing, it's like yeah, there's a certain sameness to it, and that's kind of like it's the same flavor of ice cream being served over and over and over again,
yeah,
and sometimes that's okay. Like okay, listen, I mean, I think Marvel has two choices. This is just where I'm at. They either have to go all in on that flavor of ice cream, like Hallmark does. Like, have you ever seen a Hallmark movie?
yes,
Right? They
yes,
are the same cheesy thing, but you know what? They make what I love about Hallmark is they don't apologize for it. It's like, you know what? This is our flavor. We're going all in on that flavor. It's like Coke. We're going to be the evergreen of this stuff. And every once in a while, we're going to change the formula and no one's going to like it. But you know what? This is who we are. That's one way to go. The other way to go is okay, we need to change the formula a little bit. We need to take the ice cream back to the drawing board, and we need to try a couple things out and find something that's really going to grab people's attention. Even if they hate a couple movies, that's fine. You can hate a couple of movies, but find that balance once again between tension and growth. Because kind of there like I think comics have the luxury that they can stagnate a little bit, right? They have that luxury of because it is a soap opera kind of format.
yeah.
You keep like Peter Parker's never going to have a happily ever after in the comics. He never
Well, and you
will.
can in the comics you can have a bad issue and you haven't lost $100 million. It's just like, okay, well, we'll try and fix that in the next issue. You know what I mean? It's much harder to do with a movie.
Yeah,
You
we
can't. It's harder to fix it next time around. So comics are lucky that way because effectively a comic is, it's what 24. The 32-page comic has actually 24 pages of material in it on average. At least the big guys do it that way. And if an issue is slow or does something that people isn't, it's kind of boring or whatever, okay, so we had a slow issue, we'll pick up the pace next issue. So you can kind of, like you say, you can kind of get away with that for a bit, but you eventually have to get back on track. But movies don't have that luxury, I don't think. Every
I,
movie has to be supposed to be good. It's supposed to be exciting, and it's supposed to be something people want to watch, so they'll come back and see the next one. So
yeah, but I mean, here's the thing, right? It's about. I mean, there's a thing, right? You're gonna ultimately lose money if you keep going this course, no matter what. Again,
yeah,
unless you embrace the ice cream for lack or embrace the dark side, right? And if you do that, you can kind of like okay, I'm gonna accept it now. We're not in our peak, and people are going to dip away for a while. right? Until something else comes along. Which, by the way, that's everything's a roller coaster. There's
Yeah.
gonna be peaks and valleys, and I think you gotta kind of ride through that a little bit, and that's totally fair and fine. If that's your course, cool. But if you're gonna go but there also has to be kind of a little bit, I think, of you have to take chances in your work, right?
Yes.
If you don't take chances in your work, I mean, again, there's nothing wrong with being fan service, but that's all you are at that point. You are fan service. And will that draw the same passion? I'm not sure. It doesn't always, if that makes sense.
It does. I mean, look, we've been creating stuff for our fan base for years, and so there's always that balance between, are you going to give them more of exactly the same thing, or can you make it different and more exciting? When we did the new version of Monsters, we ended up realizing we had to create an entirely new world, and we did a bestiary for the monstery of Zimrala, and in making a bestiary, instead of just making it generic monsters, that's when we got into the aspect of, well, let's not just make this a book of 100 monsters. There's 80, there's tons of books like that. Let's do something different with it. And so we added, we created a whole new world for it, so that it's not just a monsterary or a bestiary of monsters. There's a whole section that gives you the world where all these monsters exist. And so that's that balance between trying to just create a book of something that people expect, and then giving them something beyond that gives it more value, more interest, and more potential excitement. And I think a lot of people ended up being more excited about the new world, or at least as excited about the new world as they were about the new monsters we created for the game system for Monsters. So that's that constant balance between new and also giving people things that they want. We had a lot of people wanting us to do a bestiary because there'd never been one for either monsters or Tunnels and Trolls.
Well, just going into that just for a second, right? You know what your fan base kind of wants. They have
Yeah.
certain expectations, right? And because they have those expectations, you're kind of like, okay, I have to fulfill some of this, and that's your job. And by the way, as a creative, that's exactly where you want to be. All right, they want stuff from me, but
Yeah.
they want this stuff from me, and that's cool, right? That's very cool, right? But for their health as much as yours, like you mentioned with your monster, you have to change it up a little bit every once in a while.
Yeah.
You have to, right? Yeah, very cool. By the way, very
That's
cool.
the monster of Zamrala. And so the background shows this. We created this whole world that's got ancient Egyptian spin-off cultures that left Earth, gods. There's Cthulhu aspects to this world, and then a lot of sort of lost, destroyed civilizations and fallen moons and strange crystalline magic that doesn't exist anywhere else. So, and dimensional portals all over the planet that allow people to travel from any other game system, including the old Tunnels and Trolls system, to Zimrala to either visit or live there. So yeah, we had a lot of fun doing that. It was fun.
And it probably was good for everybody involved too, because from your end, it's like, okay, yes, we are delivering monsters and Tunnels and Trolls and those whole universes. We know what the audience kind of expects, and they love it, and so do we. But every once in a while, you're like, this needs a bit of a swift kick in the ass, a little bit of a kick, right? Right? It needs it.
Yeah.
For you, and as much for you as it is for the franchise, right? Because if you're doing if you did the same map over and over and over and over and over again, that would be hell, right? It would be hell. Now, that all said, when you do your maps and you do some of the other things you do, your audience has a certain expectation, and you don't mind it because, hey, A, it pays the bills, and two, hey, listen, this is what they want. Who am I to argue, right? Yeah. Who am I to argue? But even so, you're like, you know what? Do you know what I need to do with the map every once in a while? I'm going to set it on fire underneath, so it looks like a burnt treasure map. Why? Because right? Because that's different. That feels like a a little bit of something unique. I need that for my sanity. And if I need that for my sanity a little bit, so does the audience once in a while. Now, again, you can go back to that. Again, we're talking about ice cream flavors. You can serve that ice cream flavor again next month. But every once in a while, okay, let's say your flavor always is chocolate ice cream. Do you know what the chocolate could use every once in a while? Mint. Do you know what other chocolate could use once in a while? Maybe like little pieces of candy here and there.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Just every once in a while, you do something a little different so that it actually embellishes what the core of what you're doing. And sometimes also doing that stuff, you discover cool shit. And you're like, hey, wait a second. Why? This is a genius. This is ingenious. Why didn't I think of this before?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Many things are discovered by, invented by accident. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I think the other cool thing you mentioned, like a burned map, right? So the fun thing about doing that is you make a map that's burned, and then you say, well, wait, why don't we set this up so that the adventurers find this map in the burned ruins of a building? So then the burned map has a context that's burned for a reason. It's like, oh, well, we found this in the ruins of the abbey, and now we have to find the treasure that wherever this building is, and so that suddenly it takes on extra meaning besides just being a cool effect.
Exactly. Or hell, or maybe like a piece of it's missing. Let's go another way. Right?
Yeah, there you go.
They find it. It's like someone got to the map before you did, and they burned a piece of it on purpose. So now you're creating double tension, right? Now you're creating 2 points of tension. What are they hiding in that spot? Like, there's a natural, like, what's there? But the other thing too now, it's a race. You're going against somebody else.
Right. Maybe they're looking for the other piece too.
Yeah, exactly. So you've created 2 little, again, just doing a simple thing. You've created possibilities that would not have existed with a regular map. Right now, that's not to say that the next time you don't go to a regular map, but it's just like going to storytelling sometimes, right? Just going back to storytelling. Let's do this a little differently. Once in a while, it's healthy, right? I think that's any and all forms of mediums. Sometimes movies too, right? Like, again, people like work somewhere in the middle of it. I love that they tried something new with the Ghostbusters. I like that was different, and it was like, okay, you know what? Didn't always grab you, but at least, but it's like, okay, let's try something new. Let's try something new. Let's try something different, and let's keep that tone what it is, right? I kind of wish, like, when I like a series of could do with some deviation. Star Wars could use some deviation, right? Just let's go down a different, or a series, or another one, Star Trek. I don't think every show that's come out since a certain point is for me, because I'm an old school Trekkie, right?
Yeah, me too.
Right, but at the same time, I also recognize too, like, I think Lower Decks is a cool idea. I love the idea of Lower Decks. It's a fun show. But at the same time, it's not for me. Discovery is not necessarily for me. But they also, I realize, Star Trek has to evolve with the times. It's not my Star Trek anymore. They can't just target. I'm not cool anymore. They can't just target me.
There you go.
Right. And that's the thing, right? Sometimes I think every franchise needs, every once in a while, you have to tilt the axis. And then, now sometimes in that tilt, you go exactly back to what you were before. But that's okay. The tilt was necessary.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed, I watched some of the episodes of the new, what is it, Strange New Worlds?
Yeah.
That's been pretty good. I had to get used to the characters not looking like the characters from the original series, but Uhura doesn't look anything like you could possibly imagine Uhura looking like. And Nurse Chapel, for example, she doesn't look anything like the original Nurse Chapel. But that being said, I of the series, all the series they've done, I've seen bits and pieces of all of them. I think that Strange New Worlds is the one that I found the most engaging and enjoyed the most.
and that's fair. I'll have to check that one out. Like I said, there's a lot of them, right? So it's just
Yeah,
like some of them are like that's okay, that's okay. Discovery, holy shit, you're dark. Right,
that was a mess.
yeah. So but I mean that's the thing, right? Sometimes, but that's the thing. You have to sometimes take those chances, right? Especially it's like when you look at it, like I look at like sometimes it's about going back to what made the character great, but sometimes it's about okay, let's try something new,
Yeah.
and
Well, I think
that's
Strange New Worlds example is something you referenced a little while ago, was like after they tried some really experimental stuff, they said, well, let's try and do something more like the old series,
yeah,
and so let's try and make it more episodic and a little bit more formal and a little bit, and so they managed, and so it feels more like, and it's on the Enterprise, so it feels more like the original series, and it's got Pike as the captain. It's actually, like I say, of all the things they've done in the new TV Paramount version of Star Trek, that's to me been the most successful of everything they've done so
yeah.
far. So
Oh no, and that's fair. I think there's a again, sometimes it's about just making it's like when they took John Romita Jr. off of Spider-Man for a long time, and everybody was like, well, why'd you do that? And I loved Quesada's answer at the time. He's like, here's the thing. Everybody knows he's the best artist for Spider-Man. I know he's the best artist for Spider-Man. But I want the audience to miss him. So they don't take for granted how good he really is.
right,
Some
yeah,
right?
sometimes that, yeah, I know what you're saying. Sometimes that can work. Sometimes you have a big sales drop off too. I mean, I remember I used to buy a lot of DC back in the 70s and early 80s. I was buying DC comics that were done by Jack Kirby, and
Yes.
they'd start a series and he'd be on it for 12 issues or whatever, and then get somebody else, and then I'd be like, yeah, I don't care about this anymore. So I'd stop
No,
reading.
no, no.
So that's the trade-off.
That's the trade-off. But also, but you gotta. But again, sometimes you have to you have to make a calculated decision. Sometimes you can't always ride these highs. You can't do that. Sometimes you have to let things dip a little bit because long-term health. Okay, again, life is a roller coaster. We go up, then we go down, then we go
Yeah,
up, then we go down, then we go
yeah,
up, then we go down. That's the natural ebb and flow of life. So when it's up, the tendency is we want to stay here as long as we can. And there are ways to do that and milk it, and again, that's good business. But inevitably, it's going to go down. So the question is, okay, do we try to do some artificial things to try to jack it up, or do we take this opportunity, right? Right? Okay, put Jack Kirby on for a year. On, by the way, Kamandi at Earth's End, and is still one of my favorite. It's my favorite book I don't have.
Mandy,
Right?
last boy on Earth.
Yeah, yeah, that's a Kirby. That is one. That is my favorite Kirby DC
I have
work.
every
Far.
issue of that series. I bought them when I was a kid. Got them all. So I
I'm
think
a
it's like
little.
52 issues.
I'm a little jealous because because when I go to the shop, that's one of those series like the older collectors.
Yeah.
They look at it with a smile, and it's a nostalgic smile, and that makes me always a little sad because sometimes this, you go to like the back issue bin, you find a run, you can sometimes make a deal. That's a series you can't make a deal on.
I'm surprised they haven't done that as a computer animated show or even live action.
Yeah, I think,
No.
yeah, I'm genuinely stunned too, to be very honest with you, because it's such a cool idea.
Yeah, and
But
it stands alone by itself. You don't need any connection. It could just be an independent movie, has nothing to do with DC. You could just
I,
do
I
it.
I would totally be into a modern day Kamandi comic.
Yeah.
I'd do it in a heartbeat, like legitimately, right? Um,
They've tried some miniseries and crossover bits here and there. It's just you know, uh where they kind of just rehash the same thing, except Batman's in this episode or something. But
yeah, no. I mean, a truly original take on that would be
yeah,
so cool. I honestly think like the one thing DC still beats Marvel in is history. There's so much to like, especially some of the Golden Age characters. There's so
yeah,
much there. I think you could do a really cool archaeological, like a Kamandi arc, like post-apocalyptic secret history of the DCU. I think you could do something really cool with that character. I think there's a lot of untapped potential there, and I'm really shocked no one's tried. Like really tried, not to just do a rehash, but
Yeah.
something something so different. Would be I think it'd be really cool.
Yeah, if I was Warner's, I was doing Max, I'd say, let's just do a Kamandi series and let's just do it. And we don't even pay up the fact it's a DC item. Let's just do it as a sci-fi thing, like our version of Last of Us, right?
Yeah,
So let's do that on Max, and we'll film that as a live action series and just do it. And it's like,
it's
but it
there.
hasn't
It
happened.
could
So
it could be done. It could be like that. That is one property I look at. It's like there, like you from potential. It's up here.
yeah,
Let's right like it's here. Like you
yeah,
could go in so many directions and it would be fun. And I think as long as it's fun, it'll work. That's a series that does require a certain bit of let's just go along for the ride, right? And that's
right,
that.
yeah. And maybe with the success of something like One Piece, it
Yeah,
might be more possible now, because that there's certain aspects of that series that are Kamandi like. It's about a young boy going out on a crazy quest in a world he really doesn't know about, and he keeps meeting weird semi-animal beings and strange other people, and he meets up, he kind of builds this little team of people and explores this totally bizarre, weird, wild world. It has those aspects, and so you could definitely see someone doing it as a say, well, what have we got that's like that? And there would be one right there. Although, Kamandi doesn't have the fan base of One Piece, obviously, so that's
well, but that sometimes that works to your advantage too. Like look at Guardians. Like when the first Guardians movie came out, no
right.
one
Nobody knew what that was, right?
nobody knew what that was. That's an opportunity,
Yeah,
right? You have an opportunity with something like that to go, okay, like, okay, I'm a Ninja Turtles guy. You can't do that with the Ninja Turtles. It's always going
right.
to
Because
be
everybody knows
four.
what that is. Yeah,
Everybody knows who that is. So you can't mess with. Again, there's some things about that formula you can't touch. There's some things you can play with, but there's not. But it's not. It has to be a story about brothers, right? It's got to be a
right.
kind
Yeah,
of, or it has to have
and they got
that
to be
dynamic.
turtles, and they got to live in a sewer, and
Yeah,
so-
they don't. I actually think the sewer part's optional, but they have
fair
to be
enough.
turtles. They have to be they have to be turtles. They have to be brothers, and they have to be ninjas,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Because
yeah.
again, that's another franchise that you can tell any kind of story in it you want. You want to do time travel? You can do time travel. If you want to
True.
do outer space, you do outer space. You want to do like a grounded detective story? You can actually do a grounded detective story,
True.
right?
In the city, they got to figure out, what happened to April. Was kidnapped
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
They
Again,
figure
you
out what
have
happened.
like the range with that is ridiculous, but four turtles that are brothers that happen to be ninjas. That right, and they have to be teenagers. That's it. So that's it. If you can keep that in mind, you can go anywhere you want, and
There
that's
you go.
cool,
Well,
right?
if only
So
they'd listen to us.
yeah, well, I think turtles they got right. I think turtles are just fine. Like, but I mean, you look at DC, you look at where they're at and where they're going. You look at Marvel and where they're going. Like I get it, they're big franchises. There's big risk you take if you veer course. But I think sometimes again you have to pick things to tilt the axis on every once in a while. And I think it's healthy. It just is, right? So and because every other kind of medium does this on some level, and and it's in those risks that you discover things. So um I have, we've talked for over an hour.
Have we
You
really?
mentioned,
Jeez.
yeah, I know. I hope you've had fun so far.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
been great. Should
yeah.
we? When should we? What do we? How long do you want to go? I mean,
I want to talk about your novels before we go,
okay.
and then after that, like, or your comics. Like, what are you working on right now? I should ask that. Let's start there, and we'll figure out where to wrap up from that. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, I've got some art, but I worry about being able to actually show it to you and make that work.
No. So okay, so you can't talk about that. What was your last okay project? Either you really did personal, whether it's a novel or a comic, or like I obviously you just it sounds like you just released the
Sure. Well, let's start with the novel. I'll do that.
yeah.
So A friend of mine, Deborah Kerr, and myself, we came up long ago. I came up with this idea for a city of gods, sort of a, why did all the gods leave Earth? Where did they go? And what happened to them? And so that was sort of the germ idea for this novel, which ended up the first novel is like 420 pages, and the second one is I think 416 pages. And so originally this was going to be used for gaming purposes, and we actually have done gaming connected material to it. There's a City of the Gods map pack up there, and then a lot of the City of the Gods stuff appears in the Monastery of Zamrala. One of the characters in this book, a couple of characters in this book show up in the monastery as important figures in the world of Zamrala, the Egyptos goddess Sekhmet, for example. So it started out, I had this crazy idea. It was going to be a play-by-mail game originally, and I started working up, well, who's in the city, and it got more and more detailed. I got to the point where this is so immense, it's too big for just a play-by-mail game, and I ended up doing starting to write a novel, and I got my friend Deborah Kerr to help me work with me to write it, and we co-wrote it together. And one of the things kind of interesting about it is, besides the novel, we did it because we wanted it, like, these are all the classic gods of old. We didn't update them like so many things do. These are the original gods as people remember them, but they just live in a different realm, sort of a plane beyond, kind of like, plane beyond. It's not a planet. It's another realm where they ended up with another character. So we illustrated it like we did ancient, like they did books back in the 1800s. Illustrated. Yep. Novels used to be illustrated, and so that's what we did with this book. And so that made it, I think, partly because I'm a comic book fan.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to tie that in. Here's a back. I wanted to tie it into that whole concept, and so I love the idea of an illustrated novel. So that's how we did this. And in this book, you sort of meet the main characters, and you find out where are the gods, and why did they leave? That's sort of the big questions in the first novel. And from there, like I say, we've expanded on. We've done comic book, we've done the gaming stuff, where they're part of the start of Monsters, and I'm trying to finish. We're trying to finish the third novel right now. So that's been the big push in between all the other projects I'm working on. So there you go.
So okay, there's a lot we can. Okay,
And there's
I'm not gonna go down. We're gonna go. We're gonna do a side tangent. Then we're gonna go back into your series a little bit.
No problem.
So, I'm a big fan of illustrated books too. Actually, like I thoroughly enjoy the idea of them. I think in modern times, the place where I find those, there's only two spots I find them: Japanese light novels,
Yeah.
or
Yes.
or YA.
Right. Yes, those are it. That's the only places you see them anymore.
Yeah, and I honestly wonder why, because um I'm looking at, like, we live in a very interesting age in the fact that, okay, in terms of publishing, anything is possible, and commercially viable is not, doesn't mean quite the same thing it once did. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It doesn't quite mean the same thing, because it's no longer about just going, yes, you want as big an audience as you possibly can. That's true. But the reality of the situation is, because of the nature of how the internet's evolved today, the audience is no longer this one big giant, like, mass of people you're trying to figure out. Everybody's got their own interests. We talked a little bit about our interests throughout this conversation.
Yeah, sure, yes.
Right. So, like, those things, again, not everybody shares those things anymore. So I think what's happened today is that publishing in particular has become far more niche, right? And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there are a lot of parts of the publishing industry, again, not knocking traditional publishing at all. They have an audience they hit, and they know what they're doing. I think sometimes I wonder, but I think they know what they're doing. So, and that's fine. But there's so much of the audience that's not being served by that particular thing, that you can literally carve your niche today in a whole bunch of places. It's just looking at it from the world of, okay, my shit. I think my shit's cool. Who else is gonna like it? and having the acumen to go and, you know, go to those people and say, "Hey, my stuff is awesome." And then, I mean,
There you go.
sometimes it's not as awesome as you think it is. Sometimes it's more awesome than you could have possibly imagined, and you don't know until you go out there, right? But that's the whole. I think that's the whole secret today. Is I think I think books in particular, there is a lot more room to be more experimental today. And that seems to be the conversation today, is talking about that willingness to go off into the unknown a little
Yeah.
bit. Right? That seems to be the big overall theme. But I think I honestly blame games for this. This is why and this is gonna sound weird. Games have become more interact. I think games, particularly video games, have taught the audience that they can tell stories in different ways, and it has forced books, and to a lesser extent television and movies, to be far more interactive. I think games are the reason why. And because the more interactive something is, the more you feel like a part of something, the more likely you're going to invest in something.
Yeah,
And
I think that makes that's a good point.
yeah, I think that's just something that's something I've seen. It's like, I think the fact that we live in a world of Dungeons and Dragons and monsters and games like this, it has we're talking about the whole world building thing. I think that's what games took from novels, was the whole idea of, we have to have a story behind what we're doing. And as time has gone on, games have become far more intricate in their stories, because they realize, hey, if I have a compelling enough story here, and I give you the ability to interact with the story as only a game can do, well, I got the best of all worlds. And I think if you look at it, because a novel, I can imagine the story, but I can't interact with it. A
Right, that
television,
is true.
right?
It's more like watching a movie in that
Yeah,
regard.
yeah. I think a movie has an even bigger. I think movies, I think, in some ways have a bigger challenge, because the temptation when you watch a movie is you're not using your imagination at all. Even the most intricate game, whether it's a video game or a board game, requires a degree of imagination. It forces you to, because you're interacting with the world. So
And you have
it
when you're reading a
requires
book, you have to imagine what the character looks like.
exactly.
You don't
It
have
just
an exact image
right.
of them.
Yeah. It's I feel a book's a step behind the game, right? Just a step. You can't interact with it, but you're forced to imagine the world. So in an odd way, you are interacting with it, but not to the same level of degree. So I think if you look at a book today, I think the possibilities of, okay, how can I make my books more interactive?
Yeah.
I think that's an honest question that I think if you're an author, you should be asking, because, like, looking at what you do, you have a wealth of skills that are very valuable to you when you do tell stories, because you help construct them, not just in a telling a story way, but a world building way. You understand the importance of world building. You've interacted with people, you've played with people that want to be
Yeah.
involved. So it gives you a very unique insight into, what does my audience expect, that I don't think necessarily an author by itself would see. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm gonna grab you an example really quick. Hold on.
Yeah.
When we were developing the novel, one of the things I came up with was a map of the city of the gods. And so because I have the skills that I do, I was able to really do something. And I'll just kind of get the idea here. This is the city of the gods, right? So it kind of shows you, it's very, there's different sections for all the different realms. And then in the map book, I was able to actually identify all the main locations and then describe them in game terms, like what this, and describe the buildings, what's in the buildings. And so in working on the novels, especially the second and the third one, we were able to refer back to this map. Well, how long would it take him to walk from the Egyptian quarter over to the Great Library? How far is it across from the arena to the slave quarters? So we could actually use this map, which we designed for game purposes, in writing the novel, and make sure that it all fit. And it made it easier for us to write within that world, because we had this. So that's a really good example of what you were just talking about, where my skills in one aspect of my abilities, I was able to help both me and the other writer to develop, work out where the things are in the city, for example.
Yeah.
Uh,
It
so,
can be something. It can be something that simple, but again, that's the whole point. Like you're looking, if you're a creative today, one of the things you got to look at is like, how do I make something more interactive?
yeah, yes. And that was part of the goal with when we did the book was like, and even with the monsterary and everything I do is what can I do that will make this different from what other people are doing and make this special from what other people are doing. If I add illustrations to the novel, will that make that more alluring to people? Oh wow, I haven't seen one illustrated novel since my grandfather had a book like that. That's cool, and it's not for kids. Wow. Or oh, you've got a monsterary but you actually have a whole world that goes with it, trying to add extra value. We've published a bunch of solitaire adventures for Monsters, and one of the things we heard from, again, listening to your fan base, they were like, you need to do more GM adventures. So what we started doing was whenever we came out with a solitaire adventure, we would take that and then we would add a map and additional information that showed you how you could use the solitaire adventure to run it as a GM adventure. And that was something special and it added value to the book. So even if you didn't care about playing a solo adventure, you could use it as a reference and have a map and run it as a GM adventure. So we're always trying to look for ways to, give people more.
Yeah, and because at the end of the day, people want a good story. It doesn't matter what the genre or its medium is. Ultimately, even a game like Ticket to Ride, there's incredible world building in it,
Yeah.
right? Whether people realize it or not, it's there. There's a quiet story. Again, sometimes with a game, the story isn't in the forefront, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a story there,
And look how many
right?
versions they've done. How many tickets to rides are there? There's like
Eh,
Europe and Asia and the US and
yeah,
London
exactly,
and it's
exactly.
unbelievable how many there are. Africa.
Yeah, but I mean that's what happens when you have a hit. You're like, well, we want more, and you're like, oh shit, what do we do?
Yeah.
Right, and that's a good problem to have. But I mean that's what
Yes.
happened there, right? And that's what you do, right? You accommodate to the best of your abilities. But even so, it's like again, you look at something like Ticket to Ride. Story isn't at the forefront, but that doesn't mean there isn't a story there,
Right.
right? And that's something that if you're a game designer and you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, however you end up finally seeing it, or viewing it or listening to it, whatever the case may be, you got to understand that everything is world building. So, and you have to do those things. You have to do those things accordingly. So, that all said, Mr. Steve, I think we've gone quite a while. We've gone almost
Yeah.
at
Sorry about that. You may want to
no,
cut
no, no,
this
no,
down. I
no,
don't
no, no,
know.
no. This is what the show does. Like this is now going to the very beginning. Go. What are we going to talk about today? I will figure it.
Right.
Like, right?
A
We'll figure.
wide-ranging interview.
Yeah, exactly. And that's. I think those are the best kind. Myself, I got to learn a little bit about you. So I'm going to ask two questions, and then we're going to wrap up. First
Okay,
question
sounds
is
good.
this: everything you do, because you do game stuff, you do art stuff, you do like you write stuff. What's your if do you have a favorite?
That's a good question. Boy, I do enjoy it all. I think meticulous detailed art is probably my funnest thing. I like doing maps and doing detailed illustrations. I do a lot of stipple work and things like that. And that's almost like knitting, where somebody just sits and knits. In a way, I go into a Zen-like state where I can just sit there and detail out a map. And sometimes that's really enjoyable when I'm in that mode. So I guess I would say that. In terms of gratification, I have to say writing in terms of feedback and people telling you how they've fallen in love with your character or they really love the story or wow, I wasn't expecting that. I love where it's going and when's the next one. That's the most enjoyable in terms of feedback, is the writing aspect, I think. So there you go.
There you go. All right. So you answered my second question. I see. I have a theory. I always ask an artist what's their favorite thing to draw, but
Oh
I
yeah.
think for you, that's a map. It sounds like that's that, and I think it's cool. So when I was a kid, I think you'll appreciate this. When I was a kid, so my dad was a truck driver. So what I
Oh yeah.
used to do was
Wow.
once upon a time, and back in the more wild days, he would occasionally let me go on trips with him. Right, and
That's
right,
cool.
yeah, it's cool. So in the wilder days of yore, right? But at the same time, I would once upon a time I would always study maps, how to get there back in the days when people would actually read
Yeah,
maps
I
and
was
have
that
it.
way as a kid. I love maps.
Yeah, yeah, I did too. So I used to actually when I would because of all the different highways, I used to always love. I was always fascinated by all the different highway lights because it would just highlight how the infrastructure of a road was,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Just based on that. So I would take playing cards as a kid, and I would like design highways because I figured I would be like using them as kind of like the lights. So right, right, that was what I did as a kid. I used to love. I just figured because of your love of maps, you would
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Did you
You
read
would.
those bingo cards when you were on a car? Where it would have a picture of a stop sign and a picture of a railroad crossing and all these little
Yeah.
symbols in a little window, and you would slide it if you found one. You wanted to see who got the line of finding the most things, and those are really old, but they were a lot of fun.
Yes.
When you're 10 years old.
Actually, that might actually still work to this day. Someone I'm sure would
I
design
did
this.
want to talk, if I don't talk about our next Kickstarter project coming up, Chris,
That was what that was the last thing we were
you'll
going
never
to get
forgive me.
into. No. So this is the conversation. I always save the plugs until the very end
No,
because
I understand.
right, because that's a good way to wrap up. So if you got a Kickstarter, like your most recent release, or I guess your Kickstarter, this is where you want to plug it.
I wanted to talk about our next Kickstarter. It ties into what we've been talking about in several ways. One of the main ones being that doing something different and adding value to something. So Chris and I have done Chris Pergundi have done several comics together. I'll just grab two examples real quick and show them. I'm not going to go into details about them, but for instance, here's two of them. Okay, his character is Erica America. My character is Demi the Demoness, and then we also have Vamp Rooney, who's a witch slash vampire character. So
Cool.
we are going to publish some new comics. This is an enhanced version of this, an enhanced version of this, and a brand new comic as a Kickstarter. But what we're going to do with them that's really unique is that we are going to add gaming material to the back of these. We're going to describe the characters in gaming terms with stats. We're going to give you
Nice.
maps of some of the locations in the comic, and we're going to give you stats of the monsters. You can see one on the cover that appear in the comic. And I don't know that probably someone's done this before, but it's not been done recently. And so our next Kickstarter is we're going to publish these 3 comics as a set, or you can buy them separately as a Kickstarter, and they're going to be part of the Monsters game system.
Okay.
So they'll tie into that, and then there'll be comics, and so you'll have a comic and you'll have gaming thing all at the same time. So that's the next big thing we're going to do is a Kickstarter, probably early 2024 sometime. We'll be announcing that, and it'll actually come out. So
do you have a page or anything where people can get more information on this?
I will send you a link after our interview, and
Okay.
so you can kind of see some of that. So
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Okay, so then what you should do here, then to fully wrap up, and then we'll call it a day. How can people find you if they want to chat with you?
you know what? I'll give you my email address. I don't mind.
Whoa! Stop, Steve. Do you have a webpage? Like me and you personally
Yeah,
can.
I have a web. I can do that.
Yeah, do a webpage. Don't you
No
may not
problem.
you may be surprised with what you get there. Let's do the webpage.
It's I'm pretty sure it's stevecrompton.com. So, or stevencrompton.com, one of the others.
So I'm going to stevecrompton.com. I just typed it into the
Oh, good.
Twitch. Hold on a second here.
It should be my blog thing.
Hold on a second here. I'm sad. Okay, Stephen Crompton looks like is what it's gonna be. Hold on,
Okay, yeah.
let's see if I know something here. Uh, let's see if I know something. Hold on a second here. No, that's not that either. Hold on. Trained professional right here. They gave me an award for this, Steve. They gave me an award. They gave me an
Good.
award. Oh, okay. It's WordPress. It's a
Yes,
WordPress
it's a
website.
WordPress site. Yes, that's
Oh,
correct.
okay, okay,
Yeah,
hold
yeah.
on. So, folks, if you're watching me type this in right now, or if you're listening to me typing this in, it's stephencrompton.wordpress.com.
There you go.
I think I got that right. Yes, stephencrompton.wordpress.com, ladies and
I'll get
gentlemen.
an update on there too. I need to do one right away. It's been a while, so I'll get an update on there so people can
Tim,
talk about this in it. So people can see what's going.
I'll be doing the same thing actually. So actually, as soon as we're done, because I'm getting ready to launch some stuff myself, and that's how we're gonna wrap this show up. So, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for this episode. Just Josh, I want to thank Steve very much for uh, being able to put up with. We've got almost 90 minutes, Steve. As I figure, and by the way, I enjoyed it. It was fun chatting with you.
Oh, good. I hope it wasn't too boring.
No. Dude, we talked about taking risks, making maps, and why we think the Marvel movies suck. It's not.
We gave a review of like a 10 Marvel movies and TV shows.
Yeah, so yeah, it was fun, and even some DC stuff, and why we're like, why DC screws this up. But anyway, no, for ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be doing some stuff for the next little bit. I'm going to be launching a Kickstarter video service for creatives for like basically making assets, because during campaigns, a lot of creatives are unsure what to do in the middle or even at the end when it's over. And I make videos all the time, and I can help you guys do that. That stuff's going to be launched officially on Monday. The other thing that's going to be launched, although it may not be Monday, but it'll be launched soon, is I'm actually doing a podcast course teaching people how to actually put a podcast together or producing a show. So I'll be doing that. That's more information's coming next week. So that'll be that. And beyond all that, folks, I'm not sure when I'm going to be coming back to doing another episode of the podcast on stream. We're in the holiday season, and I'm going to be quite busy for the next few weeks. So I don't know if I'm going to get to do another one before the year is up. So I'm just saying that right now.
That could be your last.
For the year, you might be the last one. You legit might be the last one for the year. There might be a window right before Christmas. I might do a couple more, but it's going to be a while. It's going to be a while before I get to the next ones, folks. So enjoy this for what it was. I want to thank Steve very much for coming on the show. So thank you, Steve.
Glad to do it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And for everybody watching, everybody listening, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And I'll see you guys next time.